the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
Second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Is there a side?
How is it sexism when we have no barriers
hang on
today?
a second.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a side tube. If you,
I see the one from last week. Can I just use the same one?
yes, same one.
Okay, cool.
Yep, we are having our technical difficulties live. For some reason, I thought I had already posted that today and didn't. So there we go. But hello and welcome to HBR Talk, where the actual number this week is 243. Apparently, we've been misnumbering them, so I have to go back and fix a bunch of numbers in our YouTube channel. But this week, HBR Talk endures more discussion between feminists and anti-feminists, which is enough to drive you crazy and keep you from counting properly. So, I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator, Lauren B., because the women are womening along. But first, we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com /just the tip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And yes, the women are womening about women's womanhood, womenism, and womeninity. Make it stop.
Quick, call the wambulance.
Oh, God. So last week, one of the first things that we established, and I think we established it pretty easily and pretty well, was there is one group that is left out of this conversation via leaving out any advocates for men. Men are totally left out of the conversation. Right? So this is a conversation about, between women about female victimhood and, how much of it women have, how much of it we don't, what our opinions on it should be, and how we should be responding to it. And they've already, to this point, you can tell they've edited things out that the less victim-y women on the panel, or the non-victim-y women, had to say about it, and given more platform to the victim-y women. And we also are seeing at least the victim grift accepting women, the feminist end of it, they're wanting to attach to womanhood and femininity aspects of human disadvantage that affect people regardless of their sex, like being in a wheelchair or being poor. These are things that if you suffer them, if you experience them, whether you're male or female, the condition itself is the condition, and it keeps you from doing what it keeps you from doing. If you're female, you might get more help, but none of them have brought that up yet.
No, well, exactly.
That we know about.
Exactly. And so I think it's a little bit charitable calling this a conversation, because it really just seems like the biggest victim fight. Like they're all trying to just see who can climb the pole fastest, to gain the most oppression points. Meanwhile, what are we talking about? Because men are not a part of this conversation, what are we talking about? Equality to whom? They're all arguing against equality to each other in the room. They might as well be talking about equality to the chairs and the stools that they're sitting on. You know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, it's quite an interesting dialogue that's going on there. And knowing that parts are getting cut out of it.
Yes.
That it's not even what parts are getting cut out of it as well. That actually is... that really detracts from any trust one might have on, what are the conclusions of this panel, because you don't know, maybe one of the non-feminists or anti-feminists actually had a few things to say that would have countered some of the things that feminists said, but they got cut out of the video.
Yep.
Right? So we don't know. But last week, we made it to 9 minutes and 24 seconds. That's where we stopped. So I'm gonna start us back at 9 minutes. I'm not 100% sure. I know. Shoot. I'm gonna take us into the base scene here, and I think I have to change my window a little bit because I must have hit something and changed it. There we go. So you can actually see the video there. The whole video. But let's see where we were here.
Here know that we need. It's like there are the barriers, right, that we constantly ignore that are very much systemic and microaggressive, right? We see them and experience them every day.
Like what in the U.S.?
So,
like what?
What would you like to know an example of?
I know you said that there's like barriers. I want to know what barriers in the U.S. today as a woman.
Well,
that was a very important question that she asked last week, and I now remember partly why I wanted to repeat this part, because it's so important to keep track of what's about to happen here. Everybody should pay careful attention. She asked, what barriers as a woman?
as a woman or as a woman of color?
Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole point of intersectionality is to take away from the experiences of every group that's considered a victim group or a group that faces disadvantage, to take away that disadvantage and place it on femininity. Like, you now are not just a person who faces prejudice. You're a woman who faces prejudice. You're not a person who faces mobility challenges. You're a woman who faces mobility challenges. And they never have to answer why women are victims, because they can add one of these other details, right? And suddenly it's the womanhood that makes them the victim of this, not the condition. And it's the womanhood that makes them deserving of compassion, not the condition. And the translation of that is men in the same condition are not human, do not have human rights, and do not deserve compassion because they are not women.
Exactly.
Very frustrating.
Let's be specific.
As a woman, I said as a woman.
Well, no, I can't answer as a woman.
I
'cause I'm
just
just
feel
not
like
a
your
woman.
question.
She can't answer as a woman.
Your
woman,
question is
right?
kind of hostile when you're like, there are no barriers to what I want. Congratulations. That means you have the
How do
privilege
you know? But
where
how do
you're not
you know
facing
that?
any
How do you know
friction,
that
and
she's
that's
not
showing, and
facing
I-
any kind of challenges in her life? Just
That's a
because
good
you,
point.
Just because you look at her and see this white face and thin body and legs that you can actually stand on, what makes you think that her life isn't challenging? Just the oh my God,
The assumption.
the arrogance of the assumption, though.
Yep.
Right? Because she's speaking as a disabled person. I hate that when they start the as a black woman, as a disabled person, she's looking down on her from her place of privilege because of her disability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it's like, a battery in their back. Like, oh my God, it's disgusting. It's disgusting because it shows what they really are after. That power, you know what I mean? That they really just want to be able to wield power over other people because they just feel deficient within their own lives.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it.
Well, and it gives you a weapon that other people really can't do anything about, because, you know, if you contradict the lady in the wheelchair about her victimhood, you're a bully. Even if you have just seen her, you know, come out of a high-level professional building where she is making, you know, a high five-figure salary, and you're impoverished. She's a victim and you're not, because you have legs, right? And you can't contradict anything she says about victimhood because she's got victim cred. And it's interesting to see how that works, because I've dealt with invisible disabilities. Invisible disabilities are disabilities that, for the listener, that they affect your life in profound ways that cause you to have challenges that you have to overcome in order to do normal things, that it's not normal to have to overcome those types of challenges to do them. So, for instance, a person with severe arthritis might have a greater difficulty writing a letter to somebody because they're in severe pain. They have to overcome that pain in order to write that letter. They might have to park closer at the grocery store and ride on a cart, even though there's nothing you can look at on them and see. And, you know, if they have rheumatoid arthritis, you might be able to tell based on their fingers and stuff. But some types of arthritis are completely invisible to the naked eye. You're just looking at a person, and you can see that they may carry themselves differently or hold themselves differently, but you don't know individually how bad that person has it. My mom had 5 chronic pain disorders. 3 of them were types of arthritis. 2 of those types of arthritis didn't change the way her body looked in any way. She also had degenerative disc disease, which caused, like, everybody's discs compress with age, but if you have degenerative disc disease, it happens much faster. So maybe at the age of 50, you experience what normal people experience maybe in their 70s or 80s. And by the time she was in her 70s, she couldn't stand up straight. Like if she tried to walk, she was bent to the left at an angle, and it essentially caused scoliosis in her back. It's the only place you get scoliosis, but in any case, she was in severe pain. She was very disabled. But if you just looked at her, first of all, she didn't have any gray hair. She never had gray hair her whole life that was visible from more than 5 feet away. You had to get up close to see any strands. So she looked 10 to 20 years younger than she really was. But if she parked in a handicap spot and hobbled into the store and got onto one of the carts, one of the motorized carts, and did her shopping that way, there were people that would assume that she was hogging one of those carts that a real elderly person would need, because, 73 years old isn't really elderly if you don't have gray hair. Like, I have more gray hair now at 50 than she ever had, I am telling you. But yeah, she's just using it because she's fat. And I heard people say that about her. Fat and lazy. I'm like, do you have any idea what you're talking about? But they didn't. On top of all of that, she had a prolapsed mitral valve and severe asthma.
Oh my God.
So, like, even losing the weight was a huge challenge because exercise was painful. Everything was difficult for my mother. Like, I watched her struggle through her whole life. And you know what my mom did? She had ran a business. She was a professional wedding photographer, portrait photographer, commercial photographer. She did photography for multiple politicians in our area. She made friends with several. I actually babysat one of our state senator's kids when I was a teenager because of that. While Mom was doing portraits for them, that was some of her activism. She was on our city council for 12 years. She was a school teacher, was a substitute teacher most of that time. But I mean, and she fostered kids in the area that needed a mentor, that weren't necessarily part of a program. They would just come to the house, and Mom would, hire them to do yard work, and they'd come and spend time with her and learn life lessons and stuff like that. And it was just a thing that she did. She never just sat around and felt sorry for herself. And I don't think she ever would have said that any of what she went through was worse because she was a woman. Because at least when she went into a doctor's office and said she was in pain, they knew that she was in pain. A lot of times when a man goes into a doctor's office and says he's in pain, the doctor's like, oh, man up. My dad experienced that. He had arthritis, he had gout, he had kidney failure, and he was treated like his pain couldn't possibly be anything like what Mom went through. But gout is just profoundly awful. And, some of it was.
Yeah.
So I look at this woman having no compassion for other people's circumstances, making assumptions because of what her visual input is. She has no idea. She could be talking to somebody with, what's it called? Young arthritis, childhood arthritis, or something like that, adolescent arthritis, that lasts into adulthood. She could be talking to somebody with any number of invisible disabilities.
Right.
Nobody knew until a year before my mom passed away that she had a connective tissue disorder that was probably the underlying cause of every other pain condition she had. And it's genetic. And if they had treated that in the beginning, she probably would have had a completely different trajectory as far as her medical side of her life went. Right? So she got all the way to the last year of her life before she ever got a clue as to why she went through any of the things she went through. Because that disability is very hard to diagnose. Most of the time, it's missed in anybody that isn't incredibly tall and thin. My mom was only 5'5" at the tallest she ever got.
Wow.
And you look at the people on this stage, every single person on that stage could have a disabling condition that the woman in the wheelchair cannot see. And she would never know, and she would assume they face no challenges. And most of them would probably assume she has it more difficult, regardless of what they've been through, because that's how we're conditioned.
Yeah. Exactly, because her situation is visible, you know.
Right. She's got visibility privilege.
Right. Miss marginalized. No. God.
Exactly. And when you think about it, you know, this is true for all women. We have visibility privilege. When we suffer, our suffering is noticed. And people care.
Exactly. I said the same thing earlier in a chat, in a live stream on another channel. But this was a Black Manosphere channel. Mumia Ali. I think we've had him on the show before. I think Brian's talked to him. At any rate, so a caller called in and he's talking about this situation. He was frustrated, you know, and he's expressing himself. He's loud, he's cursing or whatever, but you know, he's making his points. And you know, I made the point in chat, you know, it's amazing how when Black women in general, really, when women are angry, we're just expected to engage and accept it, right? Engage with it and acknowledge her anger. But when a man expresses his frustration, it's, oh, he's violent. Why he must be weak. Why is he so insecure? You know, it's just dismissed.
Yeah, and I've got another perspective on top of that. You know, if a woman is aggressive and violent, we notice if she's white, and we're allowed to notice if she's white. We're allowed to say it if she's white, right? We even have a nickname for her if she's white. But if she's Black, we're stereotyping her.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what she has done. You can't call it out, or you're stereotyping her. And I've actually been, in almost verbatim terms, told that in the workplace where I was assaulted by a Black woman. Physically, like, had the shit beat out of me. And that I was told that by another Black woman after that incident. Like, that's quite a put you in your place, know your place lady statement for someone to make. And two people in management sat there and nodded along.
Jesus Christ.
Both of them white women.
Of course.
You know? But they had, you know, they had that training, that CRT training has infiltrated my workplace. Like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I literally work in a charitable institution that is run by a church, and it's infiltrated there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's quite an interesting situation. It's taken them a little bit of time to see that maybe some of the things that I said were true. Several incidents and a great deal of inconvenience that they faced because of it. But you can't fight back against that. It's a situation where if every objection you make comes from a place of being defined as bigoted in some way or another, there is no recourse against abuse. Right? So that's the situation white women are in comparison to women of any other ethnic background, and able-looking women are in comparison to women with any visible disability. Men have it one step worse because they're in that position in regard to other men in those circumstances and all women. So that pretty much puts you in a situation where if you're especially a straight white cis male in the workplace, and somebody starts abusing you in the workplace, you have no recourse
Right.
under the standards of today's political correctness.
Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's insane.
Oh, jeez. So, T.A. Price, CTR, says Lauren is cheating on HBR. No. We are in an open relationship. So Lauren's her own person. She's a big girl. She can make her own choices.
I'm a wigtail, okay?
There you go.
I go my own way.
Polyglamorous.
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop.
Oh god.
I'm gonna take us back to the video.
Feel like it's
I think as an American, you're very privileged.
Can we go
I'm not ignoring that.
more
right,
like a
so-
basic level of what the feminist movement is when it comes to just being born a woman, right? Physically, pound for pound, we are.
So, nobody has ever been born a woman physically pound for pound. That would kill your mother. just had to put that out there.
We are born as women and we have less lean muscle mass than men. So there are issues of violence and assault and stuff like that. And so therefore there are policies, there are things to help women physically, like for example, I believe being able to carry a firearm and being able to use that safely.
There's an echo.
I think, you know what? Are you controlling the side tube? Because it's not playing if you're.
Yeah,
hitting play.
I stopped it, but I could still hear it like it was still playing. Are you hearing an echo?
I'm starting and stopping the video on my side because
Oh,
it's not
okay.
doing that.
It's
when
not
you-
stopping on your side.
It's not starting or stopping on my side. No.
Oh wow, that's so weird.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, and it is stopping or starting on my side. That's really weird. What a strange technical difficulty. I've got it open on two computers. I've got it open on the computer where I'm controlling it, and then I've got it open on the computer where it's playing, and I do it that way for a couple of technical reasons, including if I can mute it on the computer that I'm using to stream it, and that way it's
No, it's not. What? You know what? I think I know what I did.
What?
I think I clicked on the YouTube link instead of the SciTube link.
Oh yeah, you might have. Hang on a second. Let me replace that in the.
I got it.
Oh, you
I
got it.
already
Okay.
clicked on it.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Cool.
Yeah, that's weird. But yeah,
No, that
otherwise.
was me. That was not a technical difficulty.
Yeah.
That was me being just difficult because I'm
Yeah.
not paying attention.
But-
Anyway.
Yeah, the other reason that I have to do it this way is because if I'm controlling it on the computer I'm streaming it from, and I'm streaming my control over it, I hear it at a different time than you do.
Yeah.
There's a delay, so yeah, it's kind of weird. But in any case, we'll go on with this.
To defend yourself against men who are born naturally
Uh-oh.
with more muscle mass than a woman.
Bro.
I keep hearing the term
This should
equity.
stop.
What would it
All right, why did it?
be? Would it be
Yeah,
50%
it
of
kicked
everyone
me
in
out
the
as
same
leader.
jobs? Would it be like prison?
The fuck?
50%.
That's equality.
50%. So
Yeah.
what
the
does
hell?
equity look like?
So equity is generally
There we
described
go.
as a state of fairness.
Against men
All right. So we go back to this, and she says.
physically, pound for pound, we are born as women and we have less lean muscle mass than men. So there are issues of violence and assault and stuff like that. And so therefore there are policies, there are things to help women physically, like for example, I believe being able to carry a firearm and being able to use that safely.
So the first thing, with her saying that women deserve essentially special self-defense rights because we are smaller, more lightweight, less muscle mass, and weaker than men, right? If that's true, if we are so much less capable of doing the physical labor of defending ourselves than men are, that calls into question a woman's ability to do physical labor in other circumstances, like the workplace.
Absolutely.
And it calls into question the validity of the wage gap narrative, which obviously we already know is bullshit. It's not a correct narrative. It's a bullshit narrative. It's based on women's choices. But here we have an admission, a tacit admission, that there are circumstances, at least some, under which women cannot do equal work.
Right.
So if they're not paid equally in those circumstances, it's not discrimination. It's not unequal pay for equal work based just on gender. But if you were to tell this woman that, I will bet you dimes to dollars, and dollars to dimes, she would not accept it.
Oh,
she would consider it discrimination to not pay women the same for less work or for lower quality work. That's. But do we get to have the same concessions for men when women are getting privileges for being less capable or lower performance? No.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah. and I, me personally, I kind of like the idea that women have never killed men before guns existed, right?
Yeah.
like, Jesus. Oh my God. No. Women don't also use other kinds of equalizers
to kill men. Yeah, like poison.
Right.
Which, or even just failure to nurture. Like back in the day when getting sick could be a death sentence because we didn't have antibiotics, or when getting injured could be a death sentence because we didn't have the knowledge that we have today in regard to care. What we did have and what we did know, like, revolved around resting and nutrition and covering up the wound and getting rid of the phlegm or whatever with regards to colds, and getting rid of the gangrene, sometimes cutting off body parts. Women were a part of all of that. And just failure to care for a man who has been injured and is in a vulnerable position can be enough to kill him in a circumstance like that. This would be, the man that protected and provided up until he became vulnerable, right? And so women were in a position, if they were married to a man or otherwise beholden to a man who became sick or who got injured, they were in a position to, through lack of compassion, dispose of him and move on to the next man. And women did it. But we won't hear about that from a discussion like this either.
Of course not.
That safely to defend yourself against men who are born naturally with more muscle mass than a woman.
And what?
Okay, so hang on.
Why is it that you're only under attack from men? Like, women don't kill other women?
So there's a half-truth in what she said there, right? If a woman is attacked by a man who is bigger and stronger than she is, and maybe faster, yes, she is at a disadvantage. It is 100% true. And yes, if she is competent with a firearm or any other kind of weapon, that can help equalize the situation. If she's not, however, it really sucks to go after someone with a weapon and have them take it away and use it on you. Right? And it's a very triumphant feeling to have somebody come after you with a weapon and to take it away from them and break it. Now, granted, you can't necessarily do that with a gun unless there's like something to throw it in nearby that will damage it. It's not very easy to do, but you can take the bullets out. You can take the clip out. You can, whatever. But yeah, that's one side of it. All right. There's other sides to this. Not all men are big and strong.
Right.
Like, I've dated guys that only came up to my shoulder. I've actually dated guys that I could pick up and carry. So, there's that aspect of it too. Some of us are tall, some of us are athletic. Some women are bigger and stronger than me. I've had female friends that were 6 feet tall. My grandmother on my dad's side was 6 feet tall. Like, she was a big, strong woman. If I hadn't grown up with asthma, and my mom wasn't so tiny, I probably would have been 6 feet tall. But in any case, there's those guys are vulnerable, right? There's women who come after guys with weapons. There's also the fact that men and women don't just attack each other. Women get attacked by other women.
Yep.
And, nobody seems to be allowed to defend themselves when a woman goes on the attack. Not a man, not a woman, not anybody. Children aren't even able to defend themselves against that. Our society doesn't defend children properly against that. Like, a woman on the attack is scarier, in my opinion, than any man.
Absolutely. Because no one will stop her.
Right. No one will stop her. Or, if somebody does, her bad guy status gets transferred to the stopper. Like,
right.
I've talked about this before. I've got a friend in one of the older communities I lived in, one of the other communities I lived in, that was convicted of assault for stopping a woman's second attempt at stabbing him in the throat.
Oh my God.
Kid you not. Like, that stood. And the judge, his reasoning was, you were too rough with her.
Wow.
She's trying to stab him in the throat.
Wow.
But there are something he can do that's too rough with her, trying to stop her from going for his jugular. Like,
sorry, I defended my life too hard, Judge.
Your Honor. Yeah. Like, that's a reality. And
God.
Women are complaining. And yeah, it is true that when a man is violent, when a man is criminally violent, he becomes a scary person, right? It's true that other citizens, men and women alike, should have the right to defend themselves against that criminal violence. Women talk about it like it's a big horror story for women, but the overwhelming majority of people who are targeted by criminally violent men are other men.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And usually for resources that they know other men are going to have, and they don't necessarily know a woman's going to be carrying any of that.
Yep.
But even the anti-feminists nodded at that, right? Even the anti-feminists are like, yeah, a woman needs a weapon to protect herself from unaccountable men, right? But, so do men. Men need weapons for that. Men can be attacked by men who are bigger than them. Men can be attacked by women who are bigger than them. And it's not true that when a woman is criminally violent, she usually targets other women.
Right.
So
I keep hearing the term equity. What would a world that has equity look like? Like, would it be 50% of everyone in the same jobs? Would it be like prison, 50%? That's
equality.
50%. So what does equity look like?
So equity is generally described as a state of fairness, because historically a lot of people have been arguing for equality. But what does that give us?
So let's go back and hear what she said again, because that's an interesting little bit of weaseling there.
Oh, yeah.
Let me get that off of there so it doesn't...
Because historically, a lot of people have been arguing for equality. But equity is generally described as a state of fairness, because historically, a lot of people have been arguing for equality. So equity is generally described as a state of fairness, because...
So equity is generally described as a seed of fairness. A seed. That's just... If equality isn't fair, what is? What is she considering to be fair?
Fairness, because historically a lot of people have been arguing for equality, but what does that give us? Like 0.5 of the 1% being women. This doesn't really do anything for us.
There you go. So equality isn't fair because women will experience the same thing men do. Right? If the 1% is still 1% and half of that 1% is women, then only half of that 1% will be men, right? So that's it. Equality isn't fair because women have the same experiences under equality that men have.
Exactly. But it's affecting women. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not equal. It's not a state of fairness, Hannah. Jesus.
And so
just sound like whiny toddlers are just not getting their way, you know?
Yeah.
people have talked about equity instead, which is instead of sameness, it's fairness. And this would mean that we remove systemic barriers to engage in society.
Okay, so now she's brought up systemic barriers, all right? But will she be able to describe any? Because, like, just Pearly things. Pearl Davis asked her.
Sorry, I was muted.
She asked what those barriers were already. She's asked 3 women what those barriers were. None have given her a single one. They've all turned to things that are not womanhood or femininity.
Not a one.
So what were you saying when you were muted?
I was yelling, how? How? You're saying all this. Again, this is why it's not even a real conversation, because we can't even get to a starting point. We can't even agree on a base set of factual things here. Everybody's just going off of, well, I feel, but and historically, Jesus Christ, now we're bringing up the dead bitches from the past. Like, we gotta walk on the graves of people to talk about how we need equality now, and it was never fair then, and Jesus.
Well, that's the really tough
but
thing.
They're still not bringing up one actual thing.
Yeah. Here's my statement on equity and making up for historical wrongs and unfairness, right? So if you've got Bob and George, and maybe they're from the same family, maybe they they have the same details, the same demographics. Bob starved to death. If you feed George, will Bob come back?
Right.
Does it make Bob feel better? Is Bob vindicated because you feed George? If George doesn't need you to feed him, and you feed him, what benefit does Bob get from that?
Right.
It's like, equity is stupid. If Bob is hungry, you feed Bob. And if you fail at that, and you learn your lesson, you don't, especially if you're starving, Roman to feed George because he has things in common with Bob, who starved. And Roman doesn't. It becomes a convoluted way of doling out abuse to people based on tribalism.
Right.
Meanwhile, you teach George not to depend on himself, and he's now socially and economically crippled. Thanks. That was helpful.
Exactly.
But let's see what else she's going to say here.
Just for women, but also for everyone.
So which barriers?
Those barriers that you don't believe in.
I do for you to have a bunch of ramps in your life. It doesn't do shit. I need those ramps, right?
Can we stick to male versus female? That's my question. So I'm thinking male versus female.
But feminism includes ability. It includes.
See, she can't name barriers that are just for women. If she were a man, she would still need ramps.
Right.
He would still need ramps. But he probably would have less assistance in procuring them.
Absolutely.
My question is.
Yeah.
You
guys can talk.
Women versus men. Like what barriers do we need removed? Because that's my statement. I'm not stating anything else. I'm stating women versus men.
The blinking, the look on her face, she's like completely lost.
Like their jaws just on the floor. Like, how? Oh my God, how can you say that? I can't believe she just said that.
Yeah. And she's not the only one. Like, look at the woman next to her. The grimace of pain. Like, this is for them, this is cringe, right? They're like, oh my God, she's not making her female victimhood reliant on factors that have nothing to do with her gender.
Very silly.
So what barrier?
Why is it silly? It's a fair question.
So, yeah, but
it's not a fair question. It's
how is it not a fair
It's
question?
kind of proving the point of what people, especially Black women, other people who are anybody who's not white, why we hear feminism and we don't want that label because it means. I'm just gonna say it means that. Like it means that.
It means
what? It means what? It means someone asks a question that you can't answer.
Pretty much.
I mean, good God, they just. And again, they're fighting over each other, stepping over each other to count the fucking oppression points. Yeah,
exactly.
Especially as a Black woman, but the disabled woman was just speaking. So which one of you is more crippled?
Yeah.
God, man.
See, another way to ask her question would be to turn to either one of those women and say, what barriers do you have that you would not have if the only thing that changed about you was your sex?
Exactly. Oh my God. I think all of their heads would explode.
Yeah. And the women who are most equipped on that stage to answer that question are the trans women, but they can't.
Exactly.
They're not allowed, because then their status will no longer be accepted.
Yep.
As soon as a trans woman points out female privilege at all, women go ape shit. Absolutely, positively lose their ever-loving minds. And they become very abusive. I've watched it happen multiple times on social media where more conservative trans women or more non-woke, like non-feminist trans women have said, that women do have extensive privilege and women do have accountability issues, and described them, talked about them, talked about in particular like reproductive rights issues from a perspective of someone who once could have gotten somebody pregnant according to the way we talk about conception, because we never talk about it as something that people do together, right? He got her he knocked her up, he got her in trouble, he put a bun in her oven, Never did she create the situation in any way. She gets knocked up, right? She becomes with child, she gets in trouble, she has a bun in her oven, but never conceived the baby.
Right.
So I've seen multiple people, Blair White's one of them, that have just been flamed for talking about those types of issues, right? And it's amazing. Their woman card just gets yanked immediately.
Yeah.
Like immediately. Like faster than ours.
Mm-hmm.
And the teeth come out, the claws come out, the acceptance goes away. Suddenly they're a man in a dress and they're a predator and all kinds of stuff. It's very, very revealing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much universal. Feminists do it. Non-feminists do it. Conservatives do it. The wokest of the woke will do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's every facet. Except most of the women in the men's rights movement don't do it.
Yeah.
There's a few that are pro due process rights and pro equal custody rights, but have issues when it comes to equal accountability for conception in regard to things like child support, that will get a little bit prejudiced when they're talking to a trans woman, or prejudiced when they're talking to a man about parental surrender. But for the most part, it is the only women who don't do that are in the men's rights movement.
Yeah.
So I guess we've got a lot of teaching to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you've already gotten to a pinnacle of whatever you think your happiness needs or whatever your survivalist needs are, when there are people on lower end who are trying to survive, who are trying to get to a point of what should be normal, based on what other people have.
It sort of sounds like
she's basically saying you have it easy and therefore we're allowed to substitute other forms of victimhood and call it female victimhood, and you're not allowed to question that because we have hardships.
Right.
That's the gist of her statement.
It sort of sounds like you're saying feminism is not always inclusive then.
Right. It's most
What gave it away? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
time it's not inclusive. It's more times than not, it's not. So, and within the just feminism space, again, there obviously the very basic is male versus female versus, but unfortunately, we've only had one subset of women be the face and voice and the academics and research and everything to be able to say, well, that's the standard we need to be in, when there are other people who are still.
That's not true.
That's not true at all. And, and here's the other thing. Just because you look at these white feminists, the main figures of white feminism, you don't see the black feminists. That's not their fault. You know what I mean? Because there have been black feminists in education all over the place, like for the fucking, oh my god.
Yeah, and on top of that, a significant portion of feminism's victim narrative is intertwined with the victim narrative in, like, it used to just be political correctness and woke ideology and critical race theory, all of that. It's the same narrative, just with different demographic details switched out for each other. There's not a difference in how it's portrayed. There's not a difference in how it's communicated. The only thing that happens with women who also are part of another victim demographic is that when they can't answer questions about their female victimhood, they substitute their other demographic.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's no integrity in this.
No, none.
It's very sad, and this woman is she's never going to rise above what she's thinking right now because she has a built-in excuse for never trying. She's a built-in excuse to always think of herself this way and to always think of politics this way. And what it'll keep her from doing is turning around and saying, all right, well, what can I personally do about my situation, independently of any help from any other people that nobody else can control? And then taking that and using that to overcome whatever barriers she can overcome with it. One of the things cis, straight, white men have to do is that specific thing. Figure out what they can control in their lives, that where nobody can take that control away from them, and focus on it to overcome any barriers that are present in their lives, whether it's poverty, whether it's personality, whether it's having not received the education they need, whether it's needing training, whatever it is. If they're clumsy, if they're, abnormally smart and have personality issues because of that, or the other way around, if they're less smart. And that is universal among cis, straight, white men, that they all have to do that.
Right.
Because people won't step in and help them overcome their barriers until those barriers become profound, like a severe disability, like a disability that is to the degree where they cannot work, and they cannot, like men who are intellectually disabled are less likely to receive compassion from the community if they don't also have another demographic that they span as, a victim demographic. It becomes harder for them to get the things they need.
Right.
So it's that in some ways, it's not a privilege to have that, but it is a weapon that you can use if you have that situation where you strengthen and hone your capability of surviving circumstances without relying on other people to remove your barriers for you.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you teach people that these barriers are insurmountable and somebody else has to come along and fix it for you, or you're disadvantaged and you just stay that way, they become helpless.
Yeah.
That's really, and they fail to thrive because of that.
Right. Right. I think they all kind of suffer this mental block, right? Just like the lady in the wheelchair. It's this mental block. Like, you don't see the work that goes into whatever it is this person has, whatever their status is. You don't see the work. You just see the end result. And you think that it was just easy. Oh, well, how did he get that? He just has it all because he's privileged.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that, much like the lady in the wheelchair. She can't fathom that a person who looks on the outside looks normal, fit, and together might actually have something debilitating going on in their life, be it physical or whatever else, mental or financial, or there could be any number of situations in that person's life that creates way bigger obstacles than this lady will ever face, right? But it's that mental block. Well, you look good on the outside, so obviously your life must be easy.
Yep.
And it's not. It's just not the case, So it creates this envy.
Yeah.
Among people who just feel like well, I'll never have what they have. Well, how do you know if you never do the work? You don't know. But that's all I really see is just the greed, the jealousy, the envy, and it's like, what if you and that's why they hate that the phrase "pick yourself up by your bootstraps."
Yeah.
They hate that. They cannot stand the fact that. Yeah, if I want to get to a certain place, I might actually have to put a little bit of effort in and not just point at someone that has it and say, well, I want that and you shouldn't have it. So let me take you down a notch, you know?
Yeah. Even when you hear complaints about the whole idea of bootstraps, well, I'm not strong enough to pick myself up by my bootstraps. Like, a lot of the times, those complaints come from somebody who doesn't know what or where their bootstraps are.
Mm-hmm.
My dad taught me to ask a question when I came up against a wall when I was growing up. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I can't do this, I can't lift that, I'm not strong enough, what can I do?
Right.
What's the goal and how could I achieve it a different way than the way that isn't working? Or what would be another goal that would give me an equal benefit? And we worked on that with a lot of different things because, I was allergic to a lot of stuff, right? I could not. My brother went out and earned money as a kid, as a preteen actually, mowing people's lawns, right? I couldn't do that. I'm allergic to grass. Twice. Like, I literally have two separate, related but not identical grass allergies. Two separate reactions that are both anaphylactic.
Oh my God.
One of them is in my face, and the other one is on my skin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, mowing the lawn was never an option for me. In fact, if our lawn was being mowed, I had to stay in the house.
Oh my God.
So, I can't even... Today, when my allergies are not as bad as they used to be, I cannot run the weed whacker. We don't need a lawnmower. Our lawn is like 2.5 feet wide, and it's sort of a border around a patio. But I mean, I can't even run the weed whacker without taking extra medication.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that wasn't going to happen, but I wasn't old enough to babysit when he was old enough to mow lawns. Like, I could go out and shovel snow with him, but I couldn't go out and mow lawns. So I had to figure out other work. My dad was like, well, what can you do? So I got paid to fold laundry and wash dishes and do other types of cleaning that didn't involve dusting, because I'm allergic to that too. And then I became part of the family photo business, and I got paid to help sort out. When you do a wedding, when you photograph a wedding, you might have, 6 to 11, maybe 12 rolls of film. Each roll of film is a 24 to 36 exposure roll of film. So the images on each roll of film will have numbers under them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can't just sort out the pictures by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You gotta actually sort them out based on which roll they come from too. So we lettered the rolls. Sometimes the numbers are off kilter and you get 1A, 2A, 3A. So we reserved A for the off kilter roll, and then if you had 2 off kilter rolls, it was A, B. We had this whole system, right? So I was doing that. I was sorting those pictures out, and I would get paid per roll as part of the family business. And my parents didn't have to do that. They would do other work, and it actually increased the amount of work they could get done and the amount of money they could make. And I became a photographer with the business early. I started doing professional photography at the age of 15. And that was what I could do, right? What can you do? Never ever in my entire life was it ever tolerated for me to whine about not being able to mow the lawn or not being able to be outside when the lawn was being mowed. Like, my parents would tell me to quit my belly aching and look at what I could do. I like to sit and read, so pick that time to have my sit and reading time, right? Quit bitching about not being able to be outside during that time. And, it really, that helped me survive a lot of things that other people when I've talked about, well, this happened and I dealt with it this way, and that happened and I dealt with it. They're like, how did you ever figure that out? How did you ever deal with that? How did you get through that without falling apart? Because I was taught to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the greatest gifts a parent can give their kid, to teach them that resilience.
Resilience, yeah, exactly.
And it hurts to watch other people not have it.
I think that's a major difference between people who have kids because they actually want to raise children and people who have kids because they just want to have a baby.
Yeah. My parents literally spent 4 years trying every night before they conceived me. The first 2 years of it.
That's not a fact I would like to know about my parents.
Oh man, the first 2 years of it, the failure was stress at my mom's workplace. She was teaching at an inner city school during a time when there were race riots and a great deal of racial tension, and so that screwed things up for her. And it took her 2 years to settle down enough from that to be able to conceive. But the stress can really mess up a woman's ability to conceive. It's why the myth that you can't get pregnant if you're raped exists, because you are less likely to get pregnant from that if it's traumatic in the moment. But and it isn't always traumatic in the moment, because it sometimes happens when you're passed out. So not for anybody who's like, oh, Hannah said rape's not traumatic. Well, if you're passed out when it happens, it's traumatic later, but you don't know it's happening in the moment. So in any case, yeah, that it is a very big difference when parents want to have a baby. But yeah, and we have the question: is it having a baby sexist as only women can carry a baby? And I've been in that conversation on Twitter for 3 days, 4 days, something like, maybe even a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, okay.
I'm just gonna leave that one right there.
Yeah. We'll go a little further into this video.
Trying to get to some type of normalcy and just living.
What is the biggest issue then that feminism faces?
I think it's the mindset. Women taking the agency, women taking initiative. I think it's mindset holding them back a lot, because if you want to be in a competitive world and compete, you have to have the right mindset. And I think a lot of people blame their lack of confidence or what society tells them for the reason they're not achieving what they need to achieve.
Oh, wow. I didn't mean to stop it on that expression. But she's going to explode.
Yeah.
That feminists tell women they're not succeeding because they're told they can't.
Yep.
Feminists are the ones who do that. Right? Feminists are the ones that tell women that they can't succeed because they're discriminated against.
Yep.
The
whole fucking shtick.
All right, so let's see Watson explode.
When that's not the case, you have to have the mindset of
Maybe
achieving,
not.
because the men who built the world had the mindset of building it. So the women who want to engage and build that further, they need to have that same mindset.
That's actually a pretty good statement, in my opinion. You to have that capability of succeeding, you have to be. Like, when she says mindset, what she's talking about is the what can I do attitude, and the can do attitude, because sometimes can't is a misunderstanding. I can't do this. Well, have you tried another way? I can't do this. Well, have you tried harder? And sometimes trying harder works, sometimes trying another way works, and you eliminate those things before you give up. And before you totally give up, again, you try to, what benefit you're trying to gain, you try to gain that benefit by moving the goal from one target as a means of gaining it to another, right? Like the benefit of work being money. I couldn't do the work that my brother was doing. I found different work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we do. I think that's like assuming that we all want to be capitalist babies.
Right.
I think that men are not well adjusted in the society and women are not trying to re-embody what they have built for us.
Says the woman that is benefiting from men's years of creating the textile industry. Like, obviously, women had years and years of design, but all the mechanics of it, men.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She's wearing metal. Men pulled that out of the ground. Men refined it. Men shaped it. She's in a broadcast that only exists because of work that men did. Like, all of the things that she's doing right now have some point in their background where without men, they wouldn't be able to happen.
Yep.
But she's complaining about it. We don't like this world that men built for us. We want to go back to the grass huts.
Yeah.
I think that like what we're forgetting is a very important detail, which is just like human respect and dignity.
Yeah,
and not asking people to prove what their experience is and to prove to you like it is.
She
Ooh, Where
the hell did that even come from? She's talking about mentality, and this woman's talking about prove their experiences.
Exactly. I mean, and again, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let them get away with not talking about men, because anytime a man fucking expresses anything, I'm sorry, I lost it. I forgot what the hell she said, and I forgot what I was going to say.
Well,
can you rewind it like a couple of seconds?
Yeah. Let's, there's 5, and we'll go back 10, and I think 15 should get us there.
Broke my brain.
I think that like what we're forgetting is a very important detail, which is just like human respect and dignity.
Yeah,
and not asking people to prove what their experience is and to.
That's what it was.
What were you going to say about it?
So men don't have to prove themselves, and when they do, oh my God, like just. It's just impossible, because anytime a man says or tries to quote unquote prove himself, they find a million ways to call him a fuckboy or somehow in some other way just discredit him.
Yeah. I also want to point out her speaking style is, I haven't said anything and I want to say something, so I'm going to use a bunch of phrases that are kind of meaningless while I'm thinking of what I'm going to say, and then I'll throw in a few buzzwords so it sounds like something important, but actually I'm not really making a statement of any kind.
Right.
And then she finally comes out with something. Can't keep track of what she's saying, and says prove what their experience is, even though what we're talking about is what they have to offer, what they use as a pathway to success, not experience. Experience is passive, right? Pathway to success is not passive. It's never passive.
Right.
And to prove to you, like, it is like such conservative thinking to say, like, I don't understand, explain it to me, versus.
There you go. It's conservative to admit when you're ignorant.
She must never be wrong in her life.
It's not conservative to conceal when you're ignorant by saying a bunch of things that don't mean anything.
Versus just saying, I don't understand, and let me respect what you are saying.
I'm respecting
right?
wherever your starting point. I'm respecting that. I'm really respecting that. I'm saying that if you don't have...
What is she even respecting? This woman has not said anything.
No idea.
Like, what point did this woman make? What is the literal point that she made?
Honestly, I think she's just saying that because she just wants to be able to get on with what else she's trying to say, because she's immediately being attacked by this harpy over here in the corner.
No, that's what I mean. What is the point that the harpy made? What is her actual, like, I'm struggling to glean anything from her statement other than that she is unhappy and she knows how to use buzzwords.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this woman respecting?
Nothing. Nothing. But she has to, I guess, put on a happy face so that she'll just shut up and let her continue speaking.
Exactly. She's respecting this other woman's social cred.
Yeah.
That's, like, you don't see this in so much in discussions with men. I rarely see a man interrupt a discussion or jump into a discussion to take several words and several sentences to say nothing and expect to be taken seriously.
Right.
Like, maybe to float as, yes, he's participating. Unless there is a point to doing that in the conversation. Like, if you're in a class where you're getting points, towards being the teacher's pet by using the correct buzzwords. Then a guy will do that because he's following the rules. He's gaming the system, right? But in most discussions where there's just a group of guys talking about something, if a guy doesn't have anything to contribute to the conversation, he will keep his mouth shut. He might, finger his beard a little bit, or he'll have his hands in his pockets and he will nod sagely and absorb. And it's interesting, a guy can look incredibly intelligent doing that, whether he is or not, whereas women like this open their mouths and sound like morons, and other women will say, I can respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if a guy did that, the other guys would not want to talk to him anymore unless they were going to make fun of him for it.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
How
does the saying go? It's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought of as an idiot than to open your mouth and prove everyone right.
Yeah. Yep.
These women they don't have to learn that lesson.
No, they have to validate each other instead.
Exactly.
And that's what just happened here.
I validate you, Hannah.
Yep.
I validate
you.
Oh my God.
Corner lady took several words and a few sentences to say absolutely nothing. And the lady that had actually said something worth thinking about says, "Oh yes, I respect that."
Yeah.
I don't.
No. Not in the least. Your womanhood is going to have to be a little bit more performative than that. I'm sorry, madam.
Yeah. So let's see what happens next.
You don't have the mindset you can even achieve it, you're never going to even try. So it's never...
achieve what? Like, what are we talking about? Because I feel like you've projected this, capitalist ideology on every woman.
Yeah, but
there she goes, the blah, 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 capitalist ideology, blah, blah, blah.
Right, but that's exactly what Pearl's they've been asking from the beginning. What is it? What are these barriers? What is it?
And she was in the middle of saying a fair world, and this other woman just talked right over her.
Mm-hmm.
Achieve whatever it is you're looking for, equality, equity. But what I'm saying is women in the feminist space and a lot of these other spaces, we don't acknowledge that we have to take the initiative. We have to take the action. We have to have the mindset. We have to demand those things.
So what's making this woman with the medals really uncomfortable right now is not capitalism. It has absolutely nothing to do with money. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with wealth. It has nothing to do with trade. But you can see she's very upset. The expression on her face is very tense. She's got her hands clasped together as hard as she can because the woman next to her is describing personal agency.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
which is really odd because the chick in the corner, she's all about like gun rights and women should have the equalizer, you know, but all of a sudden when you have to put the gun down, lady, and use your intestinal fortitude to stand on your own 2 fucking feet. Oh my God, how dare you? It's like an insult.
Yeah.
She's insulted right now.
Women who really, really subscribe to feminist ideology are as allergic to recognition of a woman's personal agency as I am to grass.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they have 2 very deep, profound immune responses to this. One of them is to transfer the blame that they see personal agency as throwing away from themselves or away from women, either to men directly or to men through something like criticizing capitalism or criticizing patriarchy or criticizing society, because when they say society, they don't mean men and women, they just mean men. Mm-hmm. That's one of the ways. The other way is to feel victimized by the idea of their own personal agency. Your personal agency, considering your actions to matter and your choices to have meaning as a woman. They consider that to be an attack on their privilege of being able to go through life just blithely doing whatever they want without consequences.
Mm-hmm.
They fear consequences and they fear having to strive for reward. So they have these 2 immune responses to this personal agency, and her whole body tension as a result of this, when the woman in the jacket is talking about having the right mindset and recognizing that women have to take the initiative if they want to change things in society to suit women's personal or women's gendered sensibilities, which is what she's really talking about doing. Women's style of dealing with things and women's style of living with things and what women feel they can accept and so on. Her talking about women stepping up and making that happen instead of demanding it from men and then sitting back and waiting for men to do it for them just is essentially poison to the feminist mind. They're terrified of it. And nowhere do you see that more than in a discussion about reproductive rights and reproductive issues. And moreover, reproductive accountability. Right? Because only men have responsibilities related to reproduction. From the responsibility to give if a woman wants to reproduce, to the responsibility to pay if she doesn't want to reproduce with a man that she's going to make a family with and live with and partner with and work with, right? And the responsibility to get the fuck out of the way if she doesn't want him involved with the parenting. Right? Those are a man's responsibilities according to feminism, and a woman has no responsibilities. She has burdens, and they'll use the word responsibility to describe burdens.
Yes,
but she's not responsible for those burdens. Somebody else should pay because she has those burdens.
Right, they happen to her, right? So
yeah.
Of course, why should she have to do anything in regards to being responsible for the choices that she made? She didn't make those choices after all, you see.
Right. You know, I picked up this 50-pound weight. How dare you not lend me a hand for the next 18 years?
Right.
Or 24 if you live in a state where child support extends through the child's college years. But yeah, we're going to see the response to this. This is, I think, what's coming up is what made me want to watch this video on the show and talk about it. And don't drink as much as Richard says you should drink. We don't want anybody to pass out. We want you to hear our show.
Things. I don't understand how we're getting so off topic. This is about feminism today, whereas everybody wants to make this about their individual, here are all the multitude of other things that factor into my person. Great. This is about feminism. It's about womanhood. I understand that all of you have your own individual experiences and the other things that feed into you as a person. That's perfectly fine. But this is where intersectionality falls off the planet and loses, I would argue, probably the vast majority of people, including me. I'm not.
That was a good point, and I'm gonna continue, but we had to do the banana thing here.
I'm not even a feminist. I don't give a crap about feminists arguing amongst themselves about who's the most victimized. But this is annoying to listen to. I honestly I don't understand anything anybody's even trying to get at.
Look, I just want to say that I don't think equity and this concept of competition can't coexist with each other. Equity.
How can the concept of equity and the concept of competition, how can they coexist if equity is about making up for disadvantage and competition relies on taking advantage of disadvantage? Jeez, Pete.
It is building more facilities for people who need them. It is recognizing that there are holes in the market and there's opportunities for women and feminine expansive people and meeting those opportunities.
On a side note, that wasn't the part that I was looking for, but it was interesting.
Women expansive people.
Women expansive people. Yeah, I hadn't heard it described that way.
Yeah, me neither.
So I gotta say this. I've said it before, and I even at one point went off on a pretty long diatribe about the courage of trans women. I have no problem with the old school understanding that there are circumstances of gender dysphoria that are so difficult for somebody to live with that transitioning is the only way the medical community at that time knows how to fix it, right? And nobody should be discriminated against in terms of, well, you don't have the same human rights as any other person, so you can't have a job, or if you come into my workplace I can't take care of you, or like if you sit next to me on the bus I have to pretend I'm scared. None of that should happen to somebody just because they are trans, right? And if you have a level of basic dignity and respect that you treat strangers with, where you smile and nod when you pass someone on the street, you don't say rude things to people just because they look different or whatever, that should extend to trans women and trans men just like anybody else. And anybody and everybody should be able to have compassion for somebody going through a level of cognitive dissonance, because dysphoria is a form of cognitive dissonance that is chemical in nature, that has them taking such dramatic action, because hormone therapy and surgery and stuff like that are very dramatic medical actions. They have side effects. They cause pain. You're not just popping a pill or doing some exercise. It's a whole life-changing experience for the individual. But I have no sympathy at all for trans ideology and woke ideology and what woke ideology has done with trans ideology. Like the idea that we should be teaching trans women or trans men that if someone's not attracted to them, that's a prejudice and they should be offended. No, you do what everybody does. You move on to the next person.
Exactly.
And it sucks a lot if it takes you longer to find a partner. But you don't have the only condition that causes that.
Exactly.
Right.
And insisting that someone finds you attractive really isn't the best way to
Right. No,
get that attention.
what
It's
that
not the
does is
attention you were looking for.
it sticks you with a partner who doesn't love you and doesn't care about you and is only with you because
Yep.
they feel obligated. And that
Yep.
person is never going to treat you right. And in the meantime, that person is trapped with someone they don't love and they don't respect. And they're never going to get what they need in a partnership with that person either. So that's a horrible relationship to inflict on both sides, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And I also don't agree with the conversion therapy that's going on in the public school system in the United States right now. I don't think you should be inflicting gender dysphoria on people who don't have it. Just like I don't think you should be inflicting depression or schizophrenia or attention deficit disorder artificially on people who don't have it. Those are things people live with, and it's not fun to live with them. But just because they don't take away from your humanity doesn't mean we should do it to people on purpose. That's cruel. Just like cutting someone's legs off because some people live in a wheelchair is cruel. It's just fucking cruel.
Yep.
And it doesn't help people who genuinely have that experience to flood the world with more and more people who have had that experience inflicted on them artificially. What it does is it makes their experience look fake. It's going to take away from the compassion with which the community can treat them. And it makes room for liars who will pretend to have the same condition in order to get things they want. It makes room for liars who will pretend to have the condition in order to achieve criminal ends, right? And so on. Like this is something that it becomes hard to talk about because if you question any aspect of the ideology, any of the things that are being done in its name, you're presumed to have a prejudice against people who are trans because they've experienced gender dysphoria. And the fact is, you don't necessarily have to have that prejudice to question these things because these things are an exaggeration. They're a caricature, right? They're not just overboard. They're a mockery of the experience of people who actually have gone through the disorder and sought treatment. And what we do for the disorder in the medical community right now, to me, is like duct tape and bale wire in construction, right? It's not necessarily a perfect way to treat it. And there should be continuing research and continuing evolution in how we approach the disorder so that hopefully someday we can provide a better medical service to people who experience dysphoria than to cut them up and change, give them chemicals and change them physically in ways that have to be maintained for the rest of their lives. But none of that can be talked about honestly. So it bugs me that we end up in a situation where we have to use these politically correct terms, female expansive people, and we're going to try to normalize. Like, are we going to normalize other medical conditions? Are we going to normalize things that we'd like to not have people have to experience those medical conditions as well? Won't we normalize broken legs, normalize vision disabilities, vision-related disabilities? Should we normalize all of those things instead of seeking ways to provide people with relief from them?
Oh, Handy, that's crazy talk.
Like, if you could point me to the direction of a doctor that would give me a pill that would make my eyesight perfect, I'd take it.
Oh,
as
in a
long as the side
heartbeat.
effects were not, going to give me health problems that were worse than having bad eyesight.
Right.
But, and I think a lot of people who go through any kind of mental health condition, the reason that it's become so prevalent to just treat those with drugs instead of various forms of therapy is because we all are looking for magic pills to make us better, right? In the modern society and the modern relationship we have to medicine, I look at this as a failure, both in politics and in medicine, that we have gotten to a point where we are politicizing a mental health condition that we've stifled advancements in treatment for in order to preserve the political status quo of a group of people.
Right.
And that's really cruel and heartbreaking in that. So I guess it really does set me off when I hear terms like that. We can refer to trans men and trans women as trans men and trans women without being dehumanizing.
Right.
It's recognizing their journey and their experiences. It's not, we shouldn't have to deny biological reality and medical reality in order to respect the person.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, we'll go a little bit farther here, and then I'll cut it. But
yeah, I think it gets into the abortion thing next, and that's a whole.
Yeah, we might just continue with this for a while. A few shows. I really haven't seen anything that I'm gonna say we've got to talk about this instead. So we'll see what's how that goes. But here we go.
Can buoy the pre-existing system that we live in a good way.
And this is where we're going to get to what I think the real feminist arguments are based off of policy. And abortion is the biggest one.
How many of you would identify as pro-choice? Let's do a show of hands for pro-choice.
I feel like pro-choice is pro-life, though.
Yeah.
Okay, and folks who identify as pro-life? Why do you identify as...
I actually couldn't see where some of them put their hands up. Some of them, I think, didn't put their hands up for either one.
I didn't count the hands.
It's interesting,
when
though.
they took this.
I'm going to look at that again.
Policy. And abortion is the biggest one.
Which I contest that as well. If abortion is your biggest issue, women are intensely privileged.
Yes.
How many of you would identify as pro-choice? Let's do a show of hands for pro-choice.
I feel like pro-choice.
Okay, so I see 4 hands.
Okay.
Wait. Oh, 5 hands. I think. No, 4 hands.
4. Yeah, 4.
4 hands. Okay.
Choice is pro-life, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pro-choice is pro-life. Okay.
Okay, and folks who identify as pro-life?
Okay. That's part of it. Is Sydney's hand is hidden behind the abortion health information block. So that is all other hands. Everybody's, there's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to 4. Yeah. That's about right. Most, more women actually identify as pro-life than pro-choice. I think there are people that don't identify as part of either camp, but they sort of say they're in one or the other based on the fact that if you don't identify with one camp or the other, people will try to shove you into one. But I mean, if you're not an activist, you're really not necessarily in a camp. And I personally, like, if you asked me to identify myself as one camp or the other, I will tell you I am pro-life.
Yeah.
But if you ask me what my opinions on abortion legislation are, I will tell you that I think it's completely useless. And that's not how I think reducing the incidence of abortion, of medical abortion, and I say that not to call it a medical treatment, but that it's done on purpose, as opposed to a miscarriage, because that's also called spontaneous abortion. But I don't think you can reduce the incidence of that necessarily as much by legislation as people think. Women organize to break those laws and create whole networks to break those laws and then brag about it later. And they'll do it for something as profoundly life impacting as whether or not they're going to fit into the same bikini next year.
Yep.
So I genuinely think that we need a whole course of education and a whole generation or two subjected to it in order to get women out of the mentality that their actions don't matter, that their reproductive choices don't matter until they are already pregnant, and that the only solution to the problem of controlling women's reproductive experiences, women having control over their reproductive experiences, is for society to give them fail-safes and second chances after they fuck up over and over again. Like, we have to get girls into the mindset that if they want to not have a baby, they should take all of the steps in their reproductive choices with prevention of pregnancy in mind, starting with being choosy about when they have sex, who they have it with, whether or not they have it in the first place, how old they are when they start, and whether they have it outside of marriage at all, and those kinds of things. And then you can, after that is settled, then you start thinking about the birth control before the sex act, and planning to have a birth control and a fail-safe birth control and a barrier method to prevent STD infection and all of that. And it should be on girls, because girls are the one with the uterus. Girls are the one with the incubator, essentially, the mixing bowl where the batter is made, and girls are the walking petri dish where any foreign biological entity, any bacteria, any virus, any of that, is more likely to grow because it's going into a warm, moist environment full of nutrients. Like, if we were blunt with girls about that when we give them sex education, and then talked on top of that about the brain chemistry of sex and what happens to her head and what happens to his head and why it hurts so bad when you break up after sex, and why that can result in animosity afterwards, or stalking and harassment, or suicide. I think we would significantly change the numbers on abortion. We might also significantly improve the experiences of boys and girls all throughout the country, and also improve the rate of people remaining married instead of getting divorced, and people having children inside wedlock instead of single parenthood. But you can't have that conversation because it's all about whether or not a woman has a right to kill the baby.
Exactly. And we can't address these situations, Hannah, because then you would have to admit that men also have rights. And we can't do that, right? We can't
Right.
do that because then it magically takes rights away from women.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that happens. I never worked that out in that math class, but it's amazing. It's amazing how they cry and cry and cry about how it's men's responsibility. They don't live up to their responsibilities. Yet the one responsibility that you have, which is the biggest responsibility of your life, is to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
Self-preservation. And it's just, nah, I shouldn't have to do that. That should be someone else's. It's someone else's job, not mine.
It's your most basic responsibility.
Right.
If you have kids, they do become your biggest responsibility. And it's to the degree that the responsibility for self-preservation ends at preserving yourself at the expense of your child. And parents go so far as to give up medical care, food, dental care, eye care, all of that, if their children are suffering. But your first and most basic responsibility that you learn is that self-preservation.
Yep.
Yeah. But in any case, yeah, I got to go back to the privilege of making abortion your biggest issue. Men have had to fight for the right to say no to sex. Like, women claim they've had to fight that fight. But we've had laws on the books for centuries to punish a man who doesn't take a woman's no for an answer. Right? The fact that some men disobey those laws and get punished does not mean that women have had to fight for the right to say no. It means that crime exists. People also steal, people also defraud, people also murder. Like, criminals exist in every aspect of failure to recognize the other person's rights. But we have not had laws on the books for centuries protecting a man's right to say no to sex. And even the laws protecting a child's right to not have sex sought from them have been gendered. So I'm sorry, but they're all on there arguing about abortion. Men have had to fight for the right to say no. Men have had to fight for the right to survive their work environment. Right? Men have had to fight for the right to not be sent into war frivolously, and they're still fighting for that right now. And losing. Right? Men have had to fight for the right to be considered parents when they father a child, and not be considered parents if they didn't father a child. Like,
right.
Women have it easy.
They absolutely do. And the only time they complain about the fight that men have to do is when they're doing it in service of themselves instead of to women.
Yeah. Yeah, it just... But I think we're going to go ahead and call it at this point. We're close to when I want to start the after show, and I do have to go to work tonight. So what we'll probably do is, when we get a chance to come back to this video, we'll come back at... this is 15:43. We'll come back at probably about 15:30. I'm going to do like I did before and copy video URL at current time and post it in the live show chat, because then that'll tell me where we were and I can go back a little bit from there. And I didn't see any super chats go by while I was watching the chat. And then tracing back, I don't see any either. So I'm going to look at Rumble. And I do not see any super chows. Well, let me look, actually. I'm looking at the wrong thing there. But Rumble doesn't, we don't have any Rumble rants. Okay, there is something new in the Super Chow channel. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 243. The question, what barriers do you have as a woman that results in a person adding race and disability to the conversation is an admission that gender isn't a barrier. But when the person answering the question turns around and uses their gender to erase the fact that race and disability may be as much, if not more, of a problem for men, it shows their narcissism. They always have it worse than anyone else.
Yep.
Great
point.
And with that, I think that's all of our. I don't have a way to really keep track of the Facebook comments in the moment. As soon as I open Facebook, my computer goes ballistic with all the other tabs. It really slows things down. So, don't leave any important comments during the show on Facebook. I don't watch the other ones either. So, thanks everybody for watching the show. This was a. Can I get away with calling this a fat sausage?
I think so.
This was a fat sausage. This sausage does not have thin privilege. And thanks, Lauren, for also helping me make the sausage fat.
Absolutely.
This makes it sound like we've impregnated it. We're gonna have a sausage abortion next week.
Great, I'm a fluffer now.
Thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.